I'm going to record the session. So if you do want to send this presentation on to any of your colleagues, please let me know and I can send that on. One thing that we are doing for all of our delegates at each of our virtual midweek masterclasses is offering a free marketing audit. So today's session will obviously all be about email marketing. So if you do have any issues with your current email program, there will be a free marketing audit open to you where we can have a chat about potentially, I don't know, opening rates that may be on a decline or click-through rates that may not be optimized, and we can maybe help you, give you some advice as to how you may overcome some of those challenges. So without further ado, I'll let Stuart kick off. There will be a question and answer session at the end of the presentation. You will have the functionality of the chat room to please ask your questions, and we will then facilitate those at the end of the session. Okay, over to you, Stuart.
Thanks very much. Just make sure this is working properly. Okay, yes, looks like we're all up and running. Okay, so this is a pretty simple session, really. It's designed for anyone who's either tasked with writing emails, or if you have to approve email copy. It basically breaks it down into three sorts of areas. So when it comes to writing any form of email marketing, your writer's basically got three jobs. So the first thing you've got to do is get your email noticed in the first place. So that's the role of the subject line. And I'm going to talk a bit about sort of some of the techniques that we use to write subject lines and to test them. The second thing that you have to do, obviously, once you've got someone to open your email, is to sort of keep them reading. So again, I'm going to show you, well, give some pointers on sort of actual writing style, but then I'm also going to show you an example of how one brand writes their emails, depending on whether they're looking to sort of build the brand or actually get the sale there and then. And then the final thing, of course, is that this is email is predominantly a direct marketing channel, so we always want to get our readers to actually do something. And that's where the click buttons come in. So I'm going to take you through each of these sort of stages, and that sort of forms the basis of the presentation. So let's move on. Okay, so let's start with subject lines. Obviously, the inboxes are busy. We get lots and lots of emails sent to us on a daily basis. Adrian, who's the chairman of Red Sea, once told me that he gets about 400 emails every day. So we're literally sort of deluged with the stuff. So obviously the role of the subject line is quite important. That's the thing that captures the reader's attention and hopefully encourages them to read on. Now, as you might expect, there's no kind of magic formula when it comes to subject lines. It's very much a sort of test and learn approach, and it's really all about finding out what or which techniques and which particular keywords appeal to your audience, and you sort of try things out and test things, and over time you come to learn more about what your customers want to read and want to hear from you. So I write a lot of emails, and I have to, I very often have to write things quite quickly. I'm often sort of up against it time-wise. So this is one of the ways that I sort of shortcut my approach to writing subject lines. I call them kickstart strategies, and basically they're sort of different ways of presenting a subject, really. And also sort of tapping into kind of psychological triggers that encourage people to take action. So I'm just going to sort of whiz you through these and sort of explain like why some of them work. And a lot of this, actually, in fairness, you'll be familiar with this. If you ever sort of pay attention to subject lines, you'll see these techniques used kind of time and time again. So the first thing is around urgency. Now, this is something you have to use quite sparingly, but the way it works essentially is that often people are motivated by the threat of losing something or the fear of missing out on something. So the example here, last chance to get 60% off, only 24 hours left. The second part of that subject line is really important. If you can apply a time limit, and obviously the shorter the time limit, the better. That tends to be more effective. So this is the principle that you see, flash sales work on this kind of premise. So you have a very short space of time in which to be able to take action, and that's often quite motivating for people. Then the second two here are almost opposites, if you like, but they're kind of on the same lines. So you present the top line benefit to your reader. So this example here is one that we wrote for a B2B company. They were a business that basically promises businesses to save them money on their energy bills. So it says add 10% to your bottom line just by making these simple tweaks. So it's a kind of dual subject line, if you like. It promises a monetary benefit, but it also tells you that it's going to be easy, that there are small things that you can do to make this happen. And again, that's quite motivating. If it sounds like it's easy, then it's quite compelling. The flip side, the third one here, again, this works really well in sort of business environments, in kind of B2B communications, where people are looking to avoid bad things happening. So there's a sense of not wanting to fail in businesses. So this subject line promises the basic mistakes that keep businesses broke. So again, it's a similar sort of thing. It's telling you that if you read the content of this email, you can prevent something bad from happening, but also that it's going to be quite simple. It's about the basic mistakes. So this is something that's easy to overcome. Moving on. Sometimes the only thing that you've got to tell someone is the offer. That's the thing that you're promoting, and that's the reason that you're getting in touch. And again, this is something that we see a lot with, particularly with retail clients. Always running discounts, always running sales. There's absolutely nothing wrong with leading from the front. So that's your reason for getting in touch with someone, is because there's an offer that allows them to save some money. So that might be the only thing you have to say. Commands work on the basis that often people are reading these things, these subject lines very, very quickly, and actually you just need to tell the person what it is that you want them to do. So for example, this sometimes it might be think about this, and it's more of a teaser, but it could be something like read this if you're looking to get a mortgage this year. So you're kind of talking directly to the person that you want to reach, and telling them what to do. Lists, very, very popular on social media, and various kind of sort of magazine articles. You'll see them when you read the Sunday papers. The reason that list things work, the reason people love a list, is because it promises a lot of information in bite-sized chunks. So this isn't something where you're going to have to read an entire article. You're going to get a series of bits of information that's broken down into sort of short little chunks. So there's a promise of a lot of useful information, but it's going to be easy to digest. Teasers and questions work in kind of the same way. So there's a difference between the way people read online versus the way people read offline. So if you imagine when you're reading a novel, or even a newspaper article, you follow the narrative kind of line by line, poring over each and every word. Online is very different. It's very sort of it's very quick. You're very much more likely to be sort of scan reading. So the purpose of teasers and questions is basically to try and slow the reader down and get them to sort of consider what you're saying. So as humans, we're kind of pre-programmed, if you like, to sort of pause and consider something when it's posed as a question. I mean, actually, the example there is from a guy called Drayton Bird, quite an old guy now, actually, a big sort of figure in direct marketing, brilliant copywriter as well. For many years, this was his most successful subject line. It comes from a reactivation program. So basically, I hadn't opened one of his emails for a while. So this was the subject line, would you like me to just shut up? In other words, would you like to stop getting my emails, kind of thing. The teaser above that is one that I wrote for customers who were looking to take out a mortgage. So we ran this for a financial services company. And basically the premise of the email is that mortgages are complicated when you're, I think it was for first time buyers actually. So it's for, people who are looking to buy a house for the first time, they start exploring the world of mortgages and actually find that it's very, very complicated. So we ran this subject line that says confused, bothered and bewildered. So it's using words that you might not necessarily expect to find in sort of marketing materials, particularly bothered and bewildered, to try and sort of tease people, try and pique their curiosity to see if we can get them to open the email. And then the last one there is really is about addressing the reader that you want to reach. So if you're sending out an email that's it's about savings accounts, or it's about mortgages, or it's about it could be about car insurance, then actually specifying that that's who you want to speak to makes the subject line more targeted and more relevant. So that in this case it's a question, do you have back pain? So anyone who has back pain, you would expect them to open the email. So it's just about sort of identifying who you want to speak to and addressing them directly, making it more likely that they'll open the email. Here's how this works in practice. I won't take you through all of this. Excuse me. But this is basically how we sort of work, how we kind of test subject lines. So actually, you'll see. I mean, I've run you through 9 there. I've got about 20 of these little sort of ways of writing subject lines. And basically, what we do, this is a subject line test for a newsletter that goes out to painters and decorators. So basically, what we did is we took, looked at the content of the email, picked out the articles that we thought would be most appealing, and then just kind of wrote subject lines in different ways to try and work out which ones are most appealing. So actually, what was interesting about this actually is we essentially had 2 groups of customers. We had a kind of retail customers, so people who were buying painting and decorating supplies, basically to paint their house, and then we had people who were in the trade. And what we found actually was that the sort of tradesmen, if you like, were much more motivated by the kind of intrigue teaser style subject lines, whereas people who were just average everyday people painting and decorating their home were much more on the left, much more sort of content driven subject lines. And so over time, that's basically given us a guide as to not only the kind of subject lines that get open, but it also ends up giving you a steer on the kind of content that people want to read as well. So it's a pretty simple process to set up, but actually over 2 or 3 months, you really get a feel of what the reading habits of your audience are and the kind of things that you can do to get them to open your emails. Now, the other thing you can do as well, actually, of course, we're only talking about small numbers of words in a subject line, but there are still sort of things that you can do to uplift response, even within the. Oh, sorry, let me just shut Teams off. Get rid of that. Sorry, I should have shut down my emails. Right. So the first thing you can do is experiment with changing a word or two. So what's the difference between the word free and the word complementary? Well, complementary is a slightly higher order word. You tend to sort of associate that with things of slightly greater value. So my wife and I once went on a spa break, and as part of the sort of package, when we left, they gave her what they called a complimentary pot of, some kind of face cream or something like that. So you tend to associate the word with things that are of a slightly greater value. So, does it make a difference if you swap one word for another to see if you can uplift response? Sometimes you can flip the subject line round as well. So, as a general rule, you always lead with your what you think is your most potent benefit. But it's worth testing to see what that is. So, in the example here, "Kit your kitchen out for less" is a pretty good benefit-led subject line. But some of your customers might be motivated more by a saving, so perhaps you lead with that. So if you've got a subject line that's working well, it's worth testing whether you can flip it and get a different response. Sometimes it's worth playing with the length. A few years ago, there used to be a school of thought that the shorter the subject line, the better. I'm not convinced that's actually the case. I think if what you're saying is interesting enough, it is worth playing with longer and shorter subject lines. So these are sort of two variations of the same thing. So the first poses it as a question: have you seen our summer price drop? So that implies that this is something that's already happening that you might have missed at the moment. So that might be a reason why you click. Huge reductions, it then says. And then the right-hand side there is basically the flip of that. So we say, summer price drops, big savings. So it's basically saying exactly the same thing. And then that final one there is basically just about. Okay, thank you. Sorry, I've got some people in doing my refitting my bathroom upstairs. That was the workman just leaving. So the final one is really just about highlighting keywords. So you can see on the right there, we've just used a couple of arrows just to point to a phrase there. So that's quite useful if you've got like a sort of double subject line. So we've got new summer products, but there's also a voucher code. It's also worth experimenting with different forms of kind of pointers, arrows, little stars, even emojis, little fingers. It's just a way of getting people to read a different part of the subject line, which is sometimes quite useful. So that's pretty much subject lines covered. So hopefully you've got at this stage you've got someone to read the subject line and they're interested enough to open up the email. But remember, you're only ever sort of milliseconds away from getting deleted. So what can we do to try and keep people reading? Well, the first things really are about, this could almost be copywriting in general, I think, but there are one or two things that are specific, I think, to emails. You talk about a reading age of 12. What that means really is it means writing in a simple way. So keeping your sentences nice and short. If you make readers work hard to understand what it is that you're trying to say, they generally just don't give you the time. They just move on. And these things, this process happens very, very quickly. So it's always worth experimenting. When you've written something, it's good practice to see how many words can you take out without losing the meaning of what it is that you're trying to say. We call it trimming the fat, if you like, to try and tighten up what you're saying, so it's very quick for the reader to understand what your message is. Clarity before clever. This isn't the place for sort of fancy wordplay. This is about getting to the point as quickly as you can. And then the next two really are about formatting. So email, in common with a lot of online writing, really works best when you chunk up your message. So if you have, if you find yourself writing, it's 2, 3, 4 sentences to a paragraph, actually you're always better off breaking that into 2 or even 3 with a little subheader. Subheaders are there really to guide the reader, because the reader's not necessarily interested in everything that you have to say. So actually by chunking it up and portioning it off with little subheaders, what you're doing is you're giving the reader the freedom to sort of miss bits out and go straight to the things that interest them, rather than forcing them to read a block of text, you know, to get to the message that they might find useful. Bullet points, you know, exactly the same thing. Bullet points are really just a means of conveying information, you know, lots of information in an easy to digest format. If you can use personalization, if that's, you know, if that's possible with the data that you use, do so. Don't necessarily just restrict it to the headline message though. If you can, you know, if you've got the person's name, for example, you know, by all means put it in the headline, but also put it somewhere else in the body copy. Essentially, everyone is drawn to their own name in writing. So actually, if you stick it sort of further down the email, all you're making sure that happens is that the person will spot that and read the message around it. So it's quite a good technique just to encourage readership of messages further down. And perhaps, you know, most important rule in copywriting is use a lot of you. So they say that, you know, you should have a ratio of about 3 to 1 of the word you to the word we. So if you're reading your copy and it's all about we do this and we do this and we, you know, and we do that, rewrite it and rephrase it so that actually it's talking about what we do for you, the reader. In the end, that's what the reader wants to know. They want to know what you can do for them. Okay, I'm going to show you now how one brand sort of tailors their copy depending on what it is that they're trying to achieve. You might have come across this company before. I think they write really good emails. So the company's called Spoke, and they are essentially what they sell is trousers, jeans and chinos for men, and they're pretty expensive. You're talking about 100 quid for a pair of jeans from this brand. All their emails basically look exactly the same. So there's always a shot of a pair of trousers, a little bit of copy, a button, and then some what they call, I suppose, added value content at the bottom. But what's interesting about their copy is that as you read it, you come to understand that actually what they're trying to do is build their brand. This is very much sort of charming, witty writing that's basically trying to establish a kinship with the reader. So the first one says, so it addresses a group of people, spokesmen. So you know, from the outset, it's saying, you know, we're talking to you as if you're part of our gang. Don't be fooled by the size of those flames. Kirk has totally got this. And anyway, if there's no char on your sausage, what's the point? Helps, of course, that he's sporting a pair of our phlegmatic new Steel 5. The 3% stretch comes in handy for evasive action, and the cool gun grey matches the stern resolve of a man in charge of the charcoal. So, you know, it's quite funny. It's quite kind of playful. It's talking about an experience that most people reading this email will have shared, you know, barbecuing outside. But you'll notice as well that it's kind of taking the mickey out of the person in the shot. You know, Kirk is the model. You never see the model's face, or you rarely see the model's face. So very often the copy has this kind of self-deprecating quality where it takes the mickey either out of the model that's in the shot, or as in the next one, the person writing it, you know, the marketers, I suppose. The second email says, honestly, we don't know our crankshafts from our clinometers, and there's nothing fast nor furious about the way we change a tire. But the stretch cotton chassis on these petrol heroes is flawless. That much we can tell you. Just look at that color. Navy got all moody and complicated. Think Ryan Gosling in Drive, like that, but, you know, in a chino. So again, it's very, you know, it's kind of self-deprecating. You know, it's talking about, you know, the guys that are writing these emails don't know their crankshafts and their clinometers, but they're also talking about, you know, making references to movies. You know, so there's this idea of there being this shared experience between the person reading the email and the person writing it. And really what that's about is building the brand. Now, what's interesting for me about this is, these are, as I say, pretty expensive jeans and chinos. You're paying £100 a pair for one of those. So the question becomes, well, how often does someone buy a pair of jeans or chinos that's that expensive? Even if you're a chino enthusiast, you 2-3 times a year, maybe something, at most. And yet, what's interesting is that actually, if you follow Spoke, you'll see that they're emailing more or less every couple of days. Now, this is interesting for us because it's probably the biggest question that we're asked as email marketers is, how often should we be mailing our base? And actually, the thing that's interesting about Spoke is that they're almost sending the same style of email goes out more or less every couple of days. It's a different coloured pair of trousers, but this sort of witty, kind of playful attempt to sort of build the brand actually makes it possible for them to email their base, as often as they like, really, and to push that frequency to the max. But there are no slouches when it comes to direct response either. So let's look what happens when they want the reader to actually take action there and then. So this is an email that gets sent out at the end of every season. So they send this out twice a year. Just before spring summer starts and just before the autumn winter season sort of starts. And it literally gets delivered like this. So there's no images, there's no HTML, nothing like that. It's literally just a text email. So the first thing you notice is that the from changes. So normally these come from Team Spoke. Normally these come from the brand, but this one comes from Katie at Spoke. So immediately it signals that that this is something different and it's something personal. It's from a person rather than a group of people. The subject line says strides in your size up to 50% off. So that's a pretty good benefit, and it's backed up with a tempting offer. So there's two things going on there. They're saying they got my size and there's a big discount to go at. So that's quite tempting. Then the copy starts, hey Stuart, just a quick heads up, we're about to make the big switch to autumn winter and we have a smattering of summer styles and colours left. If you offer a reason why there's a discount on, it makes it seem more believable. Okay, so you often, you'll sometimes get, I forget which company it is actually, there's a furniture company I get mailings from, and they'll send something out and they'll say, basically, we're clearing out the warehouse. So we've got loads of new stock coming in, so we've got to get rid of all this old stuff. So that makes the offer seem more believable. It says that there's real genuine bargains to be had here because we need to get rid of this stuff. It's not just a discount. There's a reason why it's happening. So it makes the offer believable. Then it goes on to say the sizes are a little chopped up, but the Spoke supercomputer suggests you are one of the lucky ones, and we have a couple of pieces in your size left. So not only is there an offer, I'm one of a really select few people who can benefit from this, and they know my size. So this is great customer service, great use of data as well. I should say actually one of the Spoke sort of proposition, if you like, is built around fit. So when you first sort of sign up with them, you do all these measurements of yourself, and they work out what's a perfect fitting pair of trousers for you. So this whole thing is built on the idea of we know what your size is, and therefore we can tailor things to you. So brilliant use of data, but above all, great customer service. Then it says they are between 30 and 50% off, and once they are gone, the warmer threads are out until the spring. You'll find the hidden page here. This gets even better. So it's a hidden page that only a few lucky ones can see, and I'm one of them. So no one else can see this. You can only see it if you get this email. So this is like exclusivity. I'm part of this like small group of people who can benefit. Might be just the thing to get you through a bracing October. We're not out of the woods yet. So actually, when I got this, it was absolutely chucking it down outside and freezing. So, so by chance, this was, this was really timely and really relevant. There's not much, so apologies if your size isn't left when you click. Urgency. These things might have gone by the time I click, so I'd better do it now. Okay, so the reason I show this really is to show that there's a distinction between what you're trying to achieve with your emails. It might be that actually you're just trying to talk generally about your brand and why it's good and why it might benefit that person, and so you adopt a certain style to achieve that. But then actually you tailor your copy depending on what you want someone. If you want someone to take action now, then there are different techniques that you can employ to kind of make that happen. So we've got someone to open our email. Hopefully we've got people to pay attention and to keep on reading. But ultimately we want people to click, whether it's to go through and buy something or go and look, find out a little bit more. We want them to take action, and that's where the buttons, that's where your buttons come in. The key thing to remember here for us, what we've sort of learned about this over the years, is actually it's really important to understand that not everybody is ready to buy immediately, as much as you'd like them to be. So essentially, we break it down like this. There are 3 reasons that people will click on the email. Firstly, they want to buy. Secondly, they want to know a bit more first before they buy. And thirdly, they want to do something else entirely. Okay. So here's some of the ways that we sort of go about catering to that. So this is an email that we do for Swinton. This is the opening screen of a car and home insurance email that goes out every month. So basically, what you'll see from here is that at the top you've got options about calling about your policy, calling for a quote. You've also got a number at the bottom there. Call today on 0800. So Swinton is very much an online brand now, but actually their customer base tends to be a bit older than the sort of industry average. So what you tend to find with those people is actually they're more likely to ring up and speak to someone than they are to click and fill in forms online. So we give them lots of opportunities to do that. We also offer them a button to get an instant quote, so that basically takes them through to the website. But the most important button on that page actually is the one that says more information, because what we learned basically is it doesn't matter how compelling the home insurance price is or what the offer is, there will always be a substantial number of people who simply won't click a button to talk to someone and buy a policy. They'll always want to read more first, and actually adding that button has a big impact on our ability then to convert people. So to sum that up, not everybody is ready to buy, so always give people an option to find out more, especially if it's a considered purchase. Especially if we're talking a lot of money. If I'm showing you a picture of a shirt and you like the look of the shirt, you might be ready to go and buy straight away. If we're talking about a couple of £100 on insurance, you might want to need a little, you might need to know more before you go ahead and click. The second thing that's worth trying, that we all often find uplifts responses, to try writing them in the first person. So these are ones that we've done for Dulux. So what we tend to do for Dulux, and again, this sort of ties back to what I was just saying, is that often people aren't ready to buy immediately. So what we found when we kind of took on the program is that, and this is common with a lot of clients actually, is that the email program is very much, buy this paint, buy this paint, buy this paint, buy this, with discounts, and it's, buy this product, buy this product, buy this product. Now, if you think about buying a tin of paint, in order for you to want to buy a tin of paint, you need to know what you're going to do with it first. So actually, we found that we get a lot of success actually by sending emails out that give people a reason to buy paint in the first place. So rather than it's just, look at the great discounts on our paint, buy it now, we offer people little projects. So, 4 ways to transform your living room, or what we call the weekend project, where you can, small projects that you could do in a weekend. How to paint your front door and make it look beautiful. How to turn your cupboard under the stairs into a mini hideaway for the kids. So actually giving people these little projects actually sort of encourages them or inspires them to then go and buy the product you actually want to sell. But in terms of the buttons, the way to think of this really, I suppose, is that the body copy is the voice of the brand or the voice of the marketing department, and then the button becomes the moment when the reader takes over. So, if your first project in 2019 is to liven up your lounge, our colour of the year palettes offer a great starting point for a living room makeover, whatever your mood or style. And you're clicking the button to say, okay, tell me more, show me how to do it. So it's the moment that the reader takes over. And we often find actually that can have quite a positive effect on clicks. The other thing I've seen as well recently, which I haven't tried yet, but I intend to, is that some people say that if you write them in a way that makes it sound like someone's saying something, so it's, I'm there, save me a spot, let's do this. So taking these kind of conversational phrases and trying that can have a positive impact on response as well. So they're all things, again, that, email is very, very easy to test. So it's easy to run kind of split tests, little A/B tests where you experiment with different buttons just to see, if they generate any sort of positive uplift. And then the last thing I remember is that I was saying, some people want to do something completely different to what's in your email. They're not going to click on any of the articles or any of the content that you put in front of them. So it's always good to give them the option to go elsewhere. So that's really what we talk the navigation. So these 4 bits at the top of the email there: colours, products, inspiration, and advice. Over time, we've come to learn that on average, these are the things that, these are the departments that people tend to want to go to generally. So what people will often use the email as a kind of gateway to the website. So the Dulux email comes in and it prompts them to remember that actually, yes, I am looking for paint at the moment. So I click colours and all of a sudden I'm looking for paint. At the bottom of that email, I don't know if you can see that very well, actually, you've got 4 what we call secondary navigations. So one is bathrooms, Colour Promise, Dr. Dulux, and Dream Palette. So these were bits of content that we were running at that particular period of time. But again, you test them to see what kind of things people might be interested in. So, for example, we have a lot of customers who are looking to redo their bathroom. Bathrooms need decorating, reasonably more frequently than the rest of the house because they're damp and warm, so they go moldy and they start looking tired quite quickly. Kitchens are the same. So actually we've learned by testing these bits of navigation that actually we can send people on, even if we're not talking about it in the email, we can still send that reader through to the website to actually get them to engage with some content and that might interest them, and that's just as much of a win for us. So that's it. That's a whistle-stop tour, if you like, of everything that we do to kind of write our emails, from subject lines through to a bit about content to a bit about how we get people to click. So hopefully that's been useful. Let me just come out of this and I'll have a look and see if I've got any.
Thank you, Stuart.
Questions. No problem.
I answered a few questions as we were talking. I had a couple of questions from Ash. One was around whether or not a subject header with reference to a 60% off discount would potentially be spammed. My response to that was potentially. It's not really necessarily the word 60% off that would be the trigger. It would actually be your sender reputation as a business. That is what determines generally whether or not your emails land in an inbox or indeed clutter or indeed junk. The other question Ash had, or the point Ash had, was in relation to the email frequency of Spoke. Ash was of the opinion that he was interested to know what their unsubscribe rate would be, considering they were sending emails every 2 or 3 days about chinos. My pushback was, we don't know what their unsubscribe rate is, but generally what we find at Red Sea is if you're sending good quality emails with a rich and varied inbox, you are able to send emails on a much more frequent basis. Obviously, you do continue to monitor the unsubscription rate, should I say. But good quality emails, you shouldn't see people unsubscribing from them.
Yeah, I mean, to sort of add to that as well, I mean, yeah, they're not a client of ours, but I've been following them now for probably 2 or 3 years, and they've continued to do their emails the same way throughout that period. So a good rule of thumb in really any form of direct marketing, whether it's email or whether it's direct mail, if you see something being done time and time again, you can assume from that it's working for someone. I mean, Spoke are basically a digital native company. They were born online. They do use mail as well. Their mailings are very good, but they generally seem to do all of their communication through email. So that tells me that they know what they're doing. And I think the other thing as well about I mean, if you look at the emails are relatively unobtrusive. They're reasonably fun to read. But while there's a button, there's always a shop now button. But that's kind of it. There's no prices on anything. It tends to be it's a beautiful picture of trousers looking nice, and then some funny copy. So they seem to be doing it more to kind of build the brand. And I would imagine if that was failing, that we would have seen a change of strategy by now.
We've got a question from Bev. I've got a suspicion this may be a client. I think this is Bev. But yeah, we've got a question from Bev. What's our view about using emojis in subject headers? I know this is a subject that you've had to answer before, Stuart, so I'll leave this one to you.
Yeah, definitely test them. Yeah, absolutely. I think the thing to understand with emojis, and what we've found works well in the past, is that emojis are almost a language of their own, and so you have to kind of use them in slightly sort of creative ways. So to give you an example, we work with Dulux. Every year, Dulux have what they call a colour of the year. Great big announcement. 2 or 3 years ago, their colour of the year was called Spiced Honey. So when we were testing our subject lines, we tested ones with emojis, and the one that outperformed every other one was basically a chili pepper emoji plus a pot of honey equals colour of the year. So it's almost like if you give someone something where you're almost asking them to work something out when they read it, that tends to sort of work quite well. I mean, you'll sometimes see, if you're on social media at all, sometimes people do these like quizzes where it's like, guess the movie from the emojis. So it's almost that kind of thing. If you can play with them to sort of make a different kind of message that relies on an emoji, that can often work quite well. The thing you have to be cautious with is the fact that everybody uses the same ones at the same time of year. So when you get to Valentine's Day, love heart emojis everywhere. When it gets near Christmas, snowflakes, presents, what have you. But we've used them for financial services companies, where if we've got, if we're offering a free gift on car insurance, we'll use, the little present emoji plus a picture of a car, something like that. And you just have to sort of do it in a way that, essentially it's a way of stopping the reader in their tracks, because it's a picture, not words. It means that you get your subject line read, but it's just worth trying to be a bit more imaginative than it's just, get a quote on car insurance, happy face, you know?
Thank you, Stuart. I hope that answers your question, Bev. Unless there's any further questions, I'll look to wrap up the session. As I mentioned, we have 4 more virtual midweek masterclasses scheduled. Next week's is, we have a question. I want to take this question. So this is from Georgina. I recently signed up to emails to get a first purchase discount from a fashion brand, but I know I'd probably unsubscribe as soon as I receive another email. What would you recommend the client send in their second email to the customer to stop them from unsubscribing? Right, okay. I don't know what you think, Stuart. I'm not sure if that is something that a large quantity of people do. I'm not sure. I think what you need to do is have a really strong email subscription program. So what we do with a number of our clients is when someone signs up to an email, we then have a sequence of emails that try to, welcome that recipient into the brand, sell our product, sell our brand. Maybe there's a second offer in the second email. We quite often, as part of a welcome program, have a number of offers as part of that program, just to kind of keep them coming back and opening our emails. But yeah, I think it's about that welcome program. You need to make that welcome program very efficient, very engaging, to hopefully overcome the issue of people potentially unsubscribing after that initial email.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose in some ways, it's almost a bigger issue than just about emails. It's basically about how you go about acquiring your customers in the first place. So if you've decided that the only way you can acquire customers is by making your product cheaper, then you're always going to attract people who just want something cheap. So long term, that isn't going to be a sustainable strategy for your business. At some point, that will have to change, and you'll have to come up with some way of getting people to sort of buy into your brand without cost cutting, essentially. So that you might end up deciding that actually these are not customers that you particularly want in the first place, because they're only ever going to buy one thing from you and they want it cheaper. Actually, you're looking for people who are going to buy from you long term. So you need to sell them in on the benefits of your brand and the quality of your product, before you start this sort of relentless discounting.
I hope that answers your question, Georgina. Actually, I think that might be Georgina Hallgate that used to work for us. I think.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think that's our last question. So just to reiterate, we have our session next week, which is our chairman, Adrian Rowe, talking about a white paper that we produced last year called The Secret Life of Search. That's all in relation to PPC and SEO marketing. It is Georgina that used to work for us. Hello.
Georgina.
After that, we then have a session on PPC, 10 tips to improve your PPC. The fourth session, all these sessions are on our website, by the way. The fourth session will be myself delivering a session on email strategy, talking about things like email frequency, segmentation, and so forth. And then the last session is technical SEO. So how to ensure that your website is built from the foundations up to enable you to have a strong and robust SEO strategy. I do hope you very much enjoyed today's session. We do have copywriting for email on our website. We also have recorded this session. So, if you do want the link to send on to your colleagues, please do let me know, or let Sam know, who I know you've been in contact with via email. Yeah, I think without further ado, thank you very much for attending our inaugural virtual midweek masterclass. And I hope to see you again soon. Yeah, thank you very much. Cheers, guys.
Thank you.